A week ago, I, as well as whoever's in charge of setting the odds for the Four Nations, thought that the US were going to win it. Fast forward a week, and Canada, they're now the favorites. And this isn't because of how cool Canada's power play is or some new belief in Jordan Binnington. This odd shift is simply due to Quinn Hughes pulling out of the tournament. There is no bigger loss that team could have suffered than losing Hughes. Yes, Matisz is great, but if he couldn't have gone his probable replacement, Tage Thompson, he would have done just fine. No Hellebuck? Well, the States probably would still have had the best goalie at the tournament with Jake Ottinger or Jeremy Swayman. Replacing Hughes with Hanifin is an insane downgrade. No shade to Hanifin, but that's a top 2D swapped out for a guy who's maybe top 50. Sure, Adam Fox is more than capable of taking over as the team's number one. But all of a sudden, that insane D-core isn't blowing me away as much. A week ago, they had the best defense at the tournament, but without Hughes, I might put them behind both Sweden and Canada. Fact of the matter is that the US are still more than capable of winning this tournament, but the absence of their number one D-man is going to be a major obstacle to overcome. With that, welcome into Top Shelf Face-Off Edition, presented by our friends over at Enterprise. I'm Aidan Thakkar, joined by Levi Smith and Kyle Cushman, and today, no John Matisz, because our man he's just over in Montreal seeing the sights. No,
what a guy.
He's busy at Media Day right now. We are going to bring him in later, but he's probably off talking to, I don't know, Sidney Crosby or
just a couple scrubs.
Maybe Crosby.
No one important.
Maybe Seth Jarvis, someone cool. One of those two, bro. No, there's so many cool players on that team. It'd be so exciting to be there just to talk to them. I'm really curious to see what he's got to say later on the show. But if you were there, Kyle, who would you want to be talking to?
I think Nathan MacKinnon's my number one, where finally he gets to play with Sidney Crosby and also Brad Marchand there when you talk about the Nova Scotia connection. It feels like it's been such a long time coming for those guys to finally get to play in an actual game together. He's got McDavid there as well. I just think he's the one that, of everybody on that roster, probably has the most excitement of the top tier stars going into Wednesday's game.
I just want to say, a year ago at All-Star, I asked Nathan MacKinnon if he would want to play with Sidney Crosby at this event, and he was like, well, we're both centers. And I felt so dumb, and now they're playing together, and I'm like, dude, I felt so bad. That was one of the first questions I've ever asked a pro hockey player.
He didn't want to be that guy who was like, Sid's got to shift to the wing.
Yeah, exactly. He didn't want to say that. But, I mean, it sounds like MacKinnon is going to play on that wing. What about you, Levi? Any of these guys?
I think easily it's another Canadian, but it's Crosby. The guy who's done it the most in terms of international play, just to see what he's feeling, because he's played in 2 Olympics, and to see kind of where stuff like that or the World Cup of Hockey stacks up against the feelings for the Four Nations right now. I think that'd be the most interesting to just pick his brain on. Is he really as fired up as we might think he is, or does he kind of downplaying it a bit because it's not the Olympics? So I think that'd be cool.
Well, you know what? I'm just so excited that he's going to play, because there's a lot of talk with that injury that he wasn't going to make it, but we see the lines rolled out, and the Canadian lines look fantastic, and Crosby's at the forefront, playing on that line with MacKinnon, and then also potentially on that first power play. It looks really good for Canada. What jumps off the page for you guys?
I mean, anytime Nathan MacKinnon's on the second line of any hockey team ever, I think that says enough. But, these top 2 lines alone are so stacked, and just seeing the names McDavid, Crosby, MacKinnon all on the same team on paper is just, it's kind of mind-blowing, to be honest. So
on the other side, though, the U.S. also look very good. I talked about no Quinn Hughes, so that D-core, not as maybe flashy on paper. They brought in Jake Sanderson. Looks like he'll be the 7th defenseman, but that forward group just looks fantastic and just really deep.
Yeah, it's interesting some of the decisions that they've made where the Tkachuks aren't going to start together. You have Kyle Connor there with Jack Eichel, and then Matthews on another line with Gensel and some other guys. So I'm really excited to see what it also looks like with Jack Hughes on the wing instead of down the middle. As much as we talk about how exciting Team Canada is, that USA forward group especially is outrageous. And we talked about it. It sucks that Quinn Hughes isn't going to be there. That's still a pretty darn good defense unit, though.
Well, imagine a US 5 of Jack Hughes centering Brady and Matthew, and then Quinn and Luke on defense. I feel like one day we got to see that at some sort of event.
Next year in Milan?
Maybe. I mean, I wonder if Luke Hughes can make that jump. It's a big jump, but that maybe as a power play unit too could be pretty cool. And I want to talk about these power play units, because the Canadian unit is just it is unfair. McDavid, Crosby, Makar with Reinhart and MacKinnon. And I feel like it jumps off the page that Reinhart's Sam Reinhart, he's not that guy, but Sam Reinhart's going to have back-to-back 50-goal seasons here. This guy's incredible. But the U.S. unit, at least the power play unit, also fantastic stuff. Which unit do you guys, if you had to lean one way, which one are you thinking?
Yeah, for me, it's still the Team Canada unit, where you look at just the pure dynamic offensive creativity and skill. It's one of the best units we have ever seen, I think, when we'll see it on the ice. But the interesting thing is that there isn't really the one trigger man that you expect to get set up. Like, there's no Ovechkin type. There's no Stamkos type. And yeah, McDavid is obviously amazing. McKinnon is obviously amazing. Crosby is obviously amazing. But it's not like any of those guys on their own respective units in the NHL are the guys that are consistently being the go-to guy in terms of the goals. So I wonder who's going to end up being that guy that collects the most goals in this unit. I could easily see it being Sam Reinhart. You mentioned him there as the guy that kind of sticks out as not that elite, top-end, top all-time star. But he's the guy that has led an NHL calendar year in goals when you talk about regular season and playoffs combined. He's going to be playing in that bumper net front area and such. There's going to be a lot of free pucks to collect there and put in the back of the net. So I'm really excited to see this Canadian unit.
I was just going to say, like, if he's in front, but, like, imagine Sidney Crosby in the Zach Hyman role.
Oh.
Like, Zach Hyman scored 50 right around the net. How many goals would Sidney Crosby score right around the net?
Even more, because it's actually a funny point to make, because imagine, like, it's as literally the most high-end Zach Hyman of all time that you have in Sidney Crosby, because like his hand-eye coordination, we've seen it thousands of times. So the way that he'd be able to bat some pucks down and really dig, I don't know, maybe this would be the perfect time to see it. Him in a new role for a couple games, and suddenly he's the new Zach Hyman.
Yeah. On the other side, that U.S. unit, it looks fantastic, but it's really too bad that Quinn Hughes won't be on it, because that's just, I mean, it's not like Fox isn't some fantastic defenseman.
He's okay.
He's okay. He's just fine, casually. But they are a little bit different in terms of their makeup, as like they do have the trigger man, and like Eichel's got a shot, Matisz has got a shot, and I mean Tkachuk in front of the net is probably one of the best players in the NHL, and Jack Hughes can pass the puck a little bit too. So it's not like it's much worse. Like what percentage do you think these kind of power play units will operate at in a short, at least a short sample size here?
Yeah, I'm fascinated to see how these units' productivity compares, because we talk about the creativity of that Canadian unit, but the American unit, as you mentioned there, has more the typical trigger man when you think of the Jack Eichel one-timer, the Matthews wrister, or Matthew Tkachuk in front of the net. And then obviously the creativity of Jack Hughes being able to mix wherever he wants, whether from the bumper or from the flank. A lot of rotation and mixing of positions I expect to see from both of these units. But in terms of success rate, we're talking about a short-term tournament. So if you score a couple power play goals in a game, that's going to jack it up there. Mm-hmm. If any of these units are under like 25%, that's like a big disappointment.
I think if any of these units operate under a 20% clip, that team is not winning
stunning
anything. Like, I think whoever wins this tournament probably has a power play operating around 50%.
Oh, yeah.
In a small sample size. Like,
because that's the important thing to remember, right? We talk about power plays and like 25, 30%, crazy good. That's over 80 game samples and huge amounts of games. 3-4 games, if you have one good game, or if you have a consistent power play over those games and you're getting 1 or 2 power play goals per game, that's going to juice up your numbers and have a real big percentage there, which we've seen in the World Juniors at times, which is an interesting comparison for the stuff like this, where we've seen power plays well over 40% that have really clicked. It's going to be a short time to get all these guys working together, but if they do, 40% is not out of the question at all.
That's got to be one of my favorite storylines going into this tournament, is like how fast can these guys find that chemistry, and how important is it that they have this chemistry before the Olympics next year. But I do want to just stay focused on the Four Nations, because that's what we got right now, and I want to talk about maybe some of our like less talked about, less on the ice, less like quantitative like storylines, and more just like the interesting things that you guys are excited to watch. Like, what is jumping off the page to you as just you can't wait to see it when it starts Wednesday night?
Yeah, the big storyline for me is seeing Sidney Crosby and Connor McDavid finally on the same Team Canada. We've been waiting for it forever. We look over Connor McDavid's entire NHL career. We've been waiting literally 10 years for this. When you talk about the 2015 draft class to 2025 now, it felt like this should have happened ages ago. where we see Sidney Crosby and Connor McDavid starring on the same Canadian team, and it hasn't happened yet for a bunch of different reasons, but it's finally here, and it's at the point of Crosby's career where we've already seen him pass the torch in terms of being the bona fide NHL #1 best player in the world, and now it's time for that to happen on the Canadian stage as well, wearing that maple leaf on their jerseys. You look back to the 2010 Olympics where Crosby wasn't the captain. The captain was a 36-year-old Scott Niedermayer. Well, now McDavid isn't the captain, but a 37-year-old Sidney Crosby is the captain. So not only am I looking at it as a passing of the torch in terms of the #1 star for a Team Canada jersey, I'm also maybe looking at it as a passing of the torch as Team Canada's captain as well, because Crosby's the captain here. We look to the Olympics next year. I don't think it's out of the question that this is the swan song for Crosby as team captain, and then next year he passes it along to McDavid and he takes over the captaincy as Crosby starts to play a diminished role when he'll be 38 at next year's Olympics.
Yeah, I mean, I just can't imagine a Team Canada with Crosby on it that isn't the captain. Unless, like, if the Oilers go on and win the Cup this year, then okay. I think then, that's maybe it is McDavid's NHL at this point. But if Crosby is still playing at this level, because he's not just playing on the second line for Team Canada because he's Sidney Crosby. He's still Sidney Crosby. And for me, I think he's still the captain next year at the Olympics if he chooses to go to it. But I do agree that the torch has been passed in terms of who is the face of Canadian hockey. And it's getting ready to become McDavid there.
Absolutely. And just the final thing there, it's like if McDavid shows out and has 10 points in 4 games and captain and like 2 goals in a gold medal game and things like that, that's the kind of passing of a torch where Crosby, of course, had the gold medal goal in 2010 to really take over as that #1 leader in addition to being the star player. If McDavid has a similar moment, obviously not on the same scale at a Four Nations, but if he has a similar moment here, I could see that being the direction they go in terms of a leadership group.
It would be electric if we got just like an overtime goal in this tournament, even one. I just want one. It is interesting. They're doing a 3-point system for this, so overtime does come with consequences for both teams. If you go to an overtime game in the round robin, it could hamper your chances at making the finals. Levi, what about you? What are you thinking about right now?
Yeah, I think kind of speaking to what Kyle was talking about with Connor McDavid, we're not really fully basking in the fact that it's been 8.5 years since we've had best on best at the highest level, right? On the national stage. So a guy like Connor McDavid, although, the bar is so high, this is his first time putting on a Canadian jersey in any best on best tournament outside of obviously the World Juniors, but that's not best on best. And so I think that's going to be something very interesting to know. How do you guys begin to get adjusted to this style of play? I don't think it'll be as big of a jump as it normally is in terms of when you go to international play, like in the Olympics or such. But guys like Connor McDavid, Austin Matthews, they were on that North American team, but I don't really count that. They're not representing their country. And then you got a guy like Mikko Rantanen. He's Finland's arguably their best player. He's never played on this stage. Same thing with a guy like William Nylander. Now, I will say, speaking on a guy like Nylander, he's a guy who's gone to the World Championships a few times. So I think, to his credit, he's got something like that going for him. But if you look at the grand scheme of these rosters and how they're built, Finland actually has the most guys who've played in any best-on-best tournament, and that was the 2016 World Cup of Hockey. They had 7 guys there. You look at the USA, nobody was at least playing for the States in that tournament. They had a bunch of guys on that North American team, but their entire roster, all of the guys who are still playing in the NHL, who could have been there, the Patty Kanes and stuff, off. They went all youth. So I think it's going to be very, very interesting to watch how that plays out and see if, you look back at that 2016 World Cup of Hockey, a guy like Joe Thornton or Steven Stamkos entered that tournament off of like top 20-point seasons. Those guys both had 2 points in that whole tournament, and I think 6 games played. So just to see the regression maybe of some of the higher end players and see that, this really is the best. Maybe like a Sam Reinhart won't score any goals because it's a lot different than the NHL stage. Tracking that and seeing how guys kind of come back down to earth when we get to this level is going to be very interesting. Yeah. So I don't want anybody, I think the main thing, I don't want any slander really, because these are the best players. So, if Nathan McKinnon has no goals, I'm not going to blame him. It's a completely different style of hockey that they're not used to.
Well, I'm just going to say, if Canada, USA, or Sweden don't make the final, one of Mitch Marner, Austin Matthews, or William Nylander is going to be getting cooked for their first-round exit. But, no, you're totally right. There's no pregame. There's no, warm-up game for this tournament. It's just right into it. And I think really what it is to me is like it is a great tee up for the Olympics, but it's more than just it's not an exhibition to me. I think it will have that intensity. But we are ready now to bring in our boy John Matisz from Montreal. It's time for him to empty his notebook, brought to you guys by Enterprise. So, John, what is the vibe like right now in Montreal?
The vibes are very good. I would say almost immaculate. Honestly, I thought Charlie McAvoy summed it up really well. He said this is hockey heaven, and essentially he was referring to like we're on the eve of finally a best on best tournament, and I feel like Montreal was just a perfect destination for this tournament. The biggest building in the league, a city that really cares about hockey. It's very embedded in the culture. There's something about the multiple languages that makes it seem like, it's more important with the double amount of media. The trophy was there today, the Four Nations face-off trophy, which is obviously brand new, just kind of sprout out of nowhere. Teams will also get medals in this event. And another thing that, contributed to the vibes is, I guess, some of the behind the scenes stuff. I mean, you were able to witness players get headshots in all their gear, and you could notice, oh, okay, that guy's got skates that are purposely designed for this tournament. It's got a Canadian flag. It's got something cool going on there. You get, Crosby mingling with Marner and McKinnon and just kind of casually talking. So just a really, strong start to this tournament as far as the investment from the players. And I mean, that's what this comes down to, right? Do the players care? If the players care, the fans will care because the hockey's going to be good. Okay, let's talk about Canada's big decisions. So there's two of them. Today, John Cooper announced that Jordan Binnington will be the starter for the first game against Sweden. Not super surprising. It was basically between him and Aidan Hill. And what's interesting, though, about this is that I wonder how much Jordan Binnington's playmaking, or I should say puck handling, will factor into Canada's success here. Because it can go multiple different ways. He's this goalie that loves to play the puck, which sounds great on paper and may help, Canada break the puck out. But at the same time, if you're playing with all these guys that you've never really shared the ice with, does that lead to confusion? So that's just something I was thinking about when Cooper was talking about Binnington and all the big moments he's been a part of and winning a cup. My mind went to kind of the style of goalie he is and if that's a pro or a con. And the other big decision that Canada made was that they put Mark Stone with Nathan McKinnon and Sidney Crosby at practice. And McKinnon and Crosby were probably always going to play together. They're both from Nova Scotia. One guy looks up to the other. One guy thinks the world of the other. And then who's that other guy? Who's the connective piece? And I love that it's Stone. This guy has next level hockey sense, probably in the 99th percentile in the entire league. And he's able to play fast, even though he is a below average skater by a wide margin. And I thought it was interesting that John Cooper mentioned that one of the things they looked into was how Stone plays with Jack Eichel in Vegas. Nathan McKinnon is a pretty similar player to Jack Eichel as far as the transition game. So what Canada liked was, okay, we have a proof of concept with Stone playing with Eichel. We're going to trust that Stone can play with McKinnon, that he can play a fast game without skating fast. So that'll be something to watch because that's just an absolutely star-studded top line and will be a treat to watch. Drew Doughty always puts on a show when he talks to the media. He's had this ongoing thing where he keeps saying that he's been written off. That's one of his favorite phrases. I actually interviewed him in LA a couple of years ago, and he was going on about this narrative how he feels like he's been forgotten about. And this is a Norris winner. This is a guy who was at the top of his game, closer to say 2015, but is still really good. Still, I would say in that upper echelon at 35 years old. But he feels like he's been written off. I wouldn't say that's entirely true, but I do get his point where, he's playing on the West Coast. A lot of the media is on the East Coast. They're not able to watch him a ton. Doughty, especially in his older age, is playing a more boring style of play. He's more of a 50-50 offensive, defensive guy, a true two-way guy. So just keep an eye on Doughty because he's got this real fire to him generally, but also with a Canadian jersey, he gets a chip on his shoulder back. So we'll see how that all unfolds. And to turn our attention to Team USA, their identity. You look on paper, top to bottom, best team in the tournament. I mean, Canada has the star power advantage, but I think Team USA, whether it's goaltending, defense, forward, top to bottom, player 1 to player 23, they are the best team. Well, okay, what's the identity of this group? Mike Sullivan, the U.S. coach, mentioned that they're going to be fiercely competitive. That's sort of the thing that he's pointing to, what he's hoping that his team can accomplish. And he's hoping that competitive fire can feed into a speed game, can feed into a skill game. And those three together, speed, skill, competitive fire, my mind goes to JT Miller. So I wonder if JT Miller becomes the guy for the Americans that sort of you point to him and go, he's the identity guy. If you're looking to find out what the Americans do at this tournament, just watch JT Miller next shift. Now, Brock Nelson. So he's another American forward. He's the one guy in this tournament, maybe aside from Elias Pettersson, but the one guy who's in the middle of trade rumors. He said today, no news on an extension with the Islanders, a pending UFA, and also obviously no trade. It's not like he's going to announce his own trade. But he was asked kind of like, where's your head at? What are you leaning towards? What would you prefer? And he said something along the lines of everything will sort itself out. And he gave Lou Lamoriello, the GM on Long Island, a lot of praise and talked about the fit there. So, if I'm looking at my crystal ball, I think that Brock Nelson will probably sign an extension versus get traded before the deadline. But we'll see. Nothing's done until it's done. Now, last thing, the best quote of the day. I think I got to go to Jack Eichel here. And, it's kind of one of those, silly back and forth between reporter and player, but there's been those chorus of boos when the American anthem gets played in Canada over the last little while. Obviously, there's some political reasons for that, but a reporter asked, "Hey, Jack, would you take that personally if the American anthem is getting booed while you're on the ice?" And he just kind of deadpanned and said, "I don't take anything personally." And it was just a reminder that these guys are all sort of alpha males. They're all so sure of themselves, and they got to this level, got to this Four Nations tournament, got to the NHL by blocking out the noise, focusing on themselves, and just not taking criticism to heart, even if it's one of those silly things where people are booing the anthem and it's not directly about them. So I thought that was interesting and just a nice way to cap the day where you've got some, some levity mixed in with the hardcore hockey talk.
Yeah, thank you, John. I think I am more excited now for this tournament than I was, and I'm even more jealous that you are over there in Montreal. Enjoy it. Enjoy your time there. I can't wait to see how this tournament goes on to unfold. I'm really hoping this is a success. I feel like it's going to be, but I feel like there are some things that need to happen for this to be a major win. It's going to be a win for sure. It's definitely better than an all-star game, 100%.
Yeah.
But for it to be like a major win, I put down my non-negotiables.
Okay.
So when I go through them, number one is it can't be Canada dominated. In 2016, Canada outscored the other countries 14-3. It wasn't even a contest. The USA didn't win a game. The team that played them in the finals was Team Europe, a team that Canada smoked in the group stage as well. Can't be Canada dominated again. It has to show some parity as well. I also think the final game of the round robin has to matter.
Yeah.
So going into Boston after 2 games, if Canada and Finland are both 2-0, or if the USA and Sweden are both 2-0, Game 3 will not matter.
Yeah, right.
And that, to me, would stink. In a 4-game tournament, you need every game to be interesting for it to be good. Also, on top of that, I think this has got to be the biggest one, is nobody gets hurt. If a star player were to get hurt, it would just put such a black spot on this tournament, and everyone would just be like, ooh, maybe I don't want to send my franchise center that I'm paying $14 million a year to the Olympics next season. So crossing our fingers there. I was thinking about bringing up an example of a player of how a team would feel, but I was like, I do not want that juju on me.
Stay away.
But speaking of star players, though, McDavid, Crosby, Matisz, these guys have to be among the top players at the tournament. I could see a world where they're not, where somebody else does lead the team, the tournament scoring, but they need to be among the top scorers. If the top scorers in this tournament are Adrian Kempe, Philip Forsberg, Sam Reinhart, and I don't know, Vincent Trocheck, it's going to be okay, so
quite the collection
nobody
there.
cared.
Yeah.
Nobody cared, right? And at the end of the day, on top of that, with the star players being good, to me, for this tournament to be a just major success, it needs to be a Canada-USA final. Do you guys agree with that? I just think it sells more than anything else.
Yeah, I think from a hardcore hockey fan, I think any fan like that would love a Sweden-Finland rivalry with that kind of stakes, or even some of the other matchups when you think about a 2014 rematch for Sweden-Canada. There's a lot of different ways that it could go, but for it to be, as you said, a major success and get big attention outside of the very hardcore hockey bubble, I think when you're talking about a North American tournament where it's Montreal and Boston hosting, it has to be a Canada-USA final for it to be a huge final that really gets a lot of attention rather than just being a fun final and a fun tournament inside the hockey bubble.
I think especially too considering, when this the tournament kind of got proposed and stuff, and USA was actually favored at first. We talked about this on the show before, but they were favored. They haven't won anything on this stage in so long, and so to see that happen and to still see how tight people really think this is, I think that's the only way to settle it. If we get Canada, Sweden, or USA, Finland in the finals, and we don't get that one final matchup, kind of honestly for which country is the biggest hockey country right now with the push that USA is making on Canada, it's not a failure, but that's really kind of what this feels like it's all gonna lead to.
To me, the perfect script is one of Canada, USA beats the other one, wins in Montreal. Let's say Canada wins in Montreal, and then the US win in Boston, right? I'm just you could also flip this, right?
Yeah.
But then it's 1-1, and then you say
We'll
settle it next year at the Olympics. Come on,
Okay.
that would be sick.
That does sound pretty
We were
awesome.
talking about, we were like, how sweet would a 7-game series between Canada and USA be? Just be incredible. But we need this rivalry to start cooking. Too many of these guys are buddies now. We need a hit. We need something good right away on Saturday night when they play each other.
And part of it is because we haven't had the best on best stuff. We saw the World Juniors, the Canada-USA game, that got feisty very quickly. And part of that is them being teenagers and such. But when you go so long without the international games at the men's best on best level, you get to the point where you forget about rivalries or you forget about the animosity there. I think as soon as you get to Saturday and you get that marquee matchup in a hostile building in Montreal as well, and then potentially get the return leg for a final with a gold medal trophy on the line in Boston, I think we're going to be turning the temperature up on that Canada-USA rivalry very quickly.
100%.
Do you think, I just want to say, do you think there's any chance we see in this tournament a Ovi-Yager type collision?
Oh,
the way that he decked him.
That's a great show, by the way.
That's where my head goes when you want to talk about chippiness on that stage. Obviously those guys have no beef, but crushed him, had no regard for Jaromir Jagr. Do we get anything like that in this?
I mean, I was just thinking about it. That's kind of makes me feel like Austin Matthews and Sidney Crosby kind of vibe, age-wise.
Be crazy.
But could you imagine how much everybody would hate Austin Matthews if he took out Sidney Crosby?
That's what I'm wondering. Is it going to get to the point where if guys are hitting and playing hard, are people back home going to be like, dude, take it easy? These are the best players.
I think it's one or the other, right?
Yeah.
I think right away it'll be probably figured out about 5 minutes into that Canada-Sweden game about, are these players just kind of cutting through the middle and everyone's just stick checking, or are we going to see Victor Hedman ride someone into the boards, or Seth Jarvis cross-check someone in the lower back after running into the snow in the goalie? That's what's going to set the table for the entire tournament. And I think if that's the way it goes, we'll have a major success. And if not, it'll still be really cool just to see these guys playing together.
Yeah, and I think it might start that way as a feeling out process, and then when Sam Bennett or Seth Jarvis or Travis Konechny hits the ice, or in the American game when the Tkachuk brothers hit the ice, those are going to be the tone setters that turn it from this is a feeling out process to this is war type game.
It's the once one team does it, once one
first
team
hit, first
steps
big hit
on the
boom.
line kind of thing, then
Yep.
it's all bets are off, and
Open season.
we're going to see what happens. And I think it's really exciting, and
I
we're
can't
now
wait.
so close to it starting.
Oh,
so
yeah.
it's going to be a fun week and a half here of hockey. In the dead zone of hockey, usually such a win and improvement over the All-Star game.
So
I'll take
much
it every
better.
day of the week. Want to move on now to one of our favorite times of the show, and that is Top Shelf Trivia. And this time, I've been doing so bad, and without John here, we just thought it wouldn't be fair for me to take on Kyle one-on-one. So Kyle's actually going to take us away, and I'm going to take on Levi.
Yeah.
And if I lose this one, I need to start coming up with the questions.
Yeah, we're changing up the mix here.
I'm fired up for
Levi, we're putting him on the hot seat this time with you, Aidan. We've been looking back so much over the past weeks and lead up to the Four Nations, back to the 2016 World Cup of Hockey. So it's about time we close that chapter by looking forward to the Four Nations upcoming. But one more time, we're going to look back to the 2016 World Cup of Hockey. And we're going to do that by looking at the roster that won the World Cup of Hockey last time.
Okay.
I'm going to have you guys go back and forth, no strikes. We're going to name as many players from the 2016 Canadian team
Ooh,
as we can.
Wow.
I will offer one thing here. There were 4 players that were initially named to the roster that were replaced due to injury. So if you name any of those 4 that weren't on this roster but were originally named, I'm going to give you a do-over.
Ooh,
so that
okay.
one, I feel like it would be unfair if you name a top player from the time.
Right.
Well, yeah,
and
I
then
mean, I
get an
definitely
X
don't
there and
remember who
one out.
played, but I remember when they released the roster.
Hey,
yeah.
I'm just saying. I'm trying to be. You need all the help you can get.
yeah,
Okay. So
yeah,
don't-
he's gonna guess all of those. Hopefully.
Alrighty, so one more time, I need you guys to name as many players from the 2016 Canadian World Cup of Hockey roster as you can. Levi, you're the typical host of trivia, so I'm going to give you the first one.
Sweet. Okay. My strategy here is take all the chalk off the board and let you come up with the tricky ones. So I'll start with Sidney Crosby.
Yeah, that's a very easy first pick.
He's there, yeah.
Joe Thornton.
Joe Thornton also on the roster.
Brad Marchand.
Brad Marchand is there.
Steven Stamkos.
Steven Stamkos as well. We're cooking early.
Drew Doughty.
Drew Doughty, also one of the guys still on Team Canada from back in 2016.
Patrice Bergeron.
Patrice Bergeron,
Nice.
of course, the classic Sidney Crosby winger for Team Canada. Where do we want to go next?
Jonathan Toews, I would imagine, was
Jonathan Taves was here.
Alex Pietrangelo.
Alex Pietrangelo was here.
here. I had that one.
Not at
in
the
the
Four
cupboard.
Nations, though.
Okay. Suddenly, there's a couple I don't want to pull out yet.
Okay.
Carey Price.
Carey Price, of course, the starting goaltender.
Braden Holtby.
Braden Holtby was there. Bravo.
That's nicely done. Okay.
I feel like you guys have a chance to clear the board here, but it's starting to get a little bit
Yeah,
scary.
these defensemen are really tricky to come up with, to be honest. I'll do the one that I knew this guy was there because he had a good tournament, but I want to save it for later. Matt Duchene.
Matt Duchene was there.
Nice.
Good pick.
Another defenseman here, Brent Burns.
Brent Burns.
Oh, that's a good one. Chris Letang.
Chris Letang is incorrect, but Levi led off, so you got to get one to win.
Corey Crawford.
Corey Crawford was the third
he was
goaltender.
the
Aiden picks up the
goalie.
W.
You know, I'm going to take this W, but I feel like, Levi, you were at a huge disadvantage because I was, like, literally just looking at this roster for a video
Well,
last week. Or
I was-
yesterday. No, literally yesterday. I was looking at the 3 goalies. So I was trying to compare the goalies.
It's funny you
and-
say that because when I was talking about, this is the last time that
Yeah,
this
pull
was a
out that
thing.
chain.
Yeah, he's gonna put the chain on himself here. He's
Debut
eager to get it.
chain.
But I was doing the same thing because I was looking. Joe Thornton, I said he had 2
Yep.
points. Steven Stamkos had 2 points. So I saw a couple. That's where I picked up Matt Duchene. That was like 30 minutes ago, but I didn't get to see all of them. I shouldn't have gone out on Chris Letang. Corey Perry, was he on that team?
Corey Perry was on that
Yeah,
team.
so-
You want to see how many more you can get?
Okay,
here?
I've got to think. So Corey Perry was on the team.
Yep.
Joe Getzlaff would have been on the team.
Ryan Getzlaff,
Getzlaff
yep.
would have been on the team. How many defensemen were we missing still?
You're missing
3, I believe.
4 defensemen.
You went out on Tanger?
Yep.
Yeah.
Wow, I wonder. He must have been hurt, I guess. Or?
Nope, wasn't named at all.
Wow.
Yeah.
Just disrespected.
He
But
was the mid 2010s Evan Bouchard.
It's funny how he gets disrespected like that, but then also included in this like big 3 of Pittsburgh.
Yeah.
Well, they've
Like-
been there forever.
Yeah, it's
Seriously.
for sure. But no, I honestly don't know. I don't know if I can go through this quick enough.
I have
so-
one more.
Okay.
Was Jamie Benn there?
Jamie Benn was injured, so he
Okay.
would have been one of the ones I
Was
gave you.
Taylor or Tyler there?
Taylor was not. Tyler was also injured.
Okay.
So you named
Yeah,
a
I
couple
got
of
a couple guys.
the guys there. So the guys on the roster you didn't get: Jay Bomeister.
Oh,
I
yeah.
didn't
He was a
think
late
still
injury
kicking it.
replacement there. Jake Muzzin on the back end as well was another guy that
That's
you wouldn't
the Devon
expect.
Taves ad
Yeah.
right
There you go.
I was
Drew
There you
Doughty
go.
partner, yeah.
Prime Mark-Edward Vlasic.
Nice.
Oh, pickles.
On
Nice.
the top pairing was Shea Weber.
Oh, okay.
So
That's
crazy.
those 2,
Damn.
and then the other forwards you guys missed: Logan Couture,
Yep.
Claude Giroux, Ryan O'Reilly, and John Tavares.
Oh yeah.
No one got
Totally,
Tavares.
yeah.
Honestly, I don't feel that bad.
Who
about-
led that
about
tournament in scoring? Do we know?
Crosby. It was
I
Crosby.
think it was
Crosby?
Sid, yeah.
That's
I think,
sick. See,
yeah.
that's what we need.
Yeah,
right
we
now.
need that. Yeah.
We just need one of these like stars to lead the tournament in scoring. I'm just gonna go back to that point where it can't be just like.
Adrian
there's no
Kempe.
scrubs at this tournament except for maybe Finnish defensemen, but I'm not banking on Mikkola or what's the new
Nicholas Montempalo, all
Montempalo,
22
yeah.
NHL
guy?
games.
Yeah, he's not leading this
You don't
tournament.
think
in
Oli
scoring.
Mata's going crazy?
Yeah, no, maybe. Hey, you never know. One of those guys could have more points because if they get just like
Hey,
one
never
apple,
count out Team
like,
Finland.
it's
Yeah.
a short tournament. They get one apple, they might be lead some serious big names in scoring, and that'll be the trivia question a
There
year
we
from
go.
now at the Olympics.
Yeah.
Is who are all the guys that replaced all the injured Finnish defensemen?
Yes.
Oh, that's a
years
good one.
ago. But we are really close here now to dropping the puck for a best on best tournament.
I can't wait. It's been so
in
long.
9 years. I think it's the 14th best on best tournament ever.
That's crazy.
And it's happening. It's here, and we're so excited for it. And we will be back next week to preview the finals matchup. We will have one more show in this Four Nations run, and we're excited. You guys better come back for us. That is all we got for Top Shelf today, brought to you by Enterprise. I'm Aidan Thakkar with Kyle Cushman, Levi Smith, and our boy John Matisz as well. We will see you next time.